Welcome to the Compost Pile, a podcast where we break down gardening, homesteading, and more. Join your hosts, David Poole and Aaron Barnhill, as they pile up information and break it down so that you can be more successful in the garden.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Compost Pile podcast, your podcast source for all things gardening, homesteading, plants, soil, water, all of that. I'm Aaron, as with me always here is my co-host, David. David, the owner of Mid-County Farm and Feed. He's going to answer all of my dumb questions, and hopefully we can demystify some things for you. What's up, David?
Man, it's just another wonderful day.
It is. It's a good crisp winter day, but it wasn't too cold. It's got me thinking a lot about preparing for this spring and getting ready, right? We talked about containers last time, and I have to prepare the soil for that too. One thing that I always think about is trellises and support, and what kind of plants am I going to be putting in the ground? Am I going to be planting a lot of cucumbers? Well, if I am, I'm going to need a lot of trellising material.
So you're talking about supporting your plants?
Yeah, talking about supporting them emotionally and physically.
Okay. Did they come ask you for dinner yet?
No. Well, I asked them for dinner. That's what happens.
It's the wrong kind of support. Sorry.
I say, give me your life, and I'm gonna cook you up.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Plant support's pretty important. Especially some of these plants grow massively.
Yeah.
If you don't have the right setup, then it makes it a lot more difficult to be able to maintain them, to harvest them. A great example is I chose the wrong plant support option for a vining tomato this year.
Yeah. What did you choose?
Well, what I chose was to not timely put the support in. So by the time I could finally got around to it, I just wedged something up underneath it, and it just kept growing. So then it went up, and then it went down onto the ground, and it was virtually everywhere. And it became a nuisance because in between a couple raised beds, I could no longer walk.
Yeah, right.
Because there were so many tomatoes on this thing that I couldn't warrant just cutting it. And it was just a bad choice. And it really just came down to I wasn't prepared. I didn't pay attention to what I was growing.
You didn't have the forethought, right? Yeah.
I didn't have that cultural practice of planning and having a good sense of what I'm doing when and what I need to actually function in the space. Yeah. There's a lot of different plants out there that need to have some kind of support. Even peppers get loaded down.
Oh man, peppers. I find that peppers are the thing that I'm physically adjusting and tweaking kind of the most, because they change throughout the day a lot. The weight changes on a pepper a lot, right? When it's making little flowers and it just has its branches and vegetative growth, it doesn't weigh very much. But then once it starts getting heavy peppers on it, it really does need that support, right? So I wouldn't even have thought about that. I was kind of thinking more about vines and stuff, but that just goes to show that you have to be thinking about these things with a lot of plants.
And too, peppers, if you're like me, I don't do a lot of intentional pruning. I just kind of let them grow wild. Yeah. Well, normally, if I was pruning them and keeping my plants more centered and not having a lot of long, leggy growth, I could probably get away with just tying it off to a stake, whether it be what they call a sturdy stake, it's like a metal
green.
Yeah, it's like a metal stake that's coated in a plastic, or I could use a wooden stake, bamboo pole, and I could probably. I'm supporting most of the weight, but I've cut off a lot of the long leggy growth. But that doesn't work for me most of the time because I don't prune a lot of it. I just kind of let it go wild. Yeah. That's where the tomato cage works, or we'll use what I'll call a pepper cage. A small tomato cage works really well because I can kind of let it lean out and I can catch a lot of those supports, and that works a little bit better. So,
and it still protects it from the wind, right, from all these things because it's in those cages. Those are really handy. Something that's much cheaper and simpler than a tomato cage is just a simple hoop.
Yeah.
Right? They have those. It's I don't know how much they cost now, but they used to be 76 cents a piece. And they'll have a one hoop system you could put there, maybe a 2-tier or a 3, all different sizes. They look like cones. Those are your best friend.
Yeah, I mean, and the quality of support is pretty important too. If you've ever gone, like let's say we're talking about compact plants like tomatoes or peppers. Everybody always comes to ask for a tomato cage, but not all tomato cages are created equally.
Okay, yeah.
The most common is like what we call the economy cage. They're inexpensive.
That's the one you get off Temu and then read it.
Yeah, I mean they're you can when we get them in, they're so flimsy in a sense, and they have so little like contact points and support in them that a lot of times we'll get tons of them that are broken before we ever even make it.
Tomatoes are heavy. That's one of the ones. That's a plant you really need to get something high quality.
I don't want to use the economy cage, the cheapest ones, because if you really look at a good quality plant cage, or whether it be like a square one's going to be far more supportive and rigid and can hold a lot more force and weight than a round one. But also it's how many layers and how many like actual vertical layers and how many horizontal layers in a cage makes a huge difference.
Right.
Because every weld point strengthens it, and it can hold more. Like some of these cages, you can just stick them on the ground and like lean on them yourself, and they won't give. Where like a cheap cage, if I lean on it, I'm hitting the ground.
If it's cheap, the wind can blow it over.
And
right?
I'll be like, oh, like you don't need something that heavy duty. You don't, but oftentimes you're rebuying those cages over and over and over again because they don't last but maybe a season or two. So we like to go in with like higher quality. Some of them are really interesting, like the square ones. Some of them are collapsible, which I like because if you're like me, you get busy, you forget, and you're like, oh, I need to put something around this, and I'm like, it's too big, I can't. So now I can undo it and I can wrap it, and that's always kind of interesting.
That's pretty.
I've done some really unconventional uses of those before. I did them as a zigzag one time. Yeah. Because I was too late. But it just kind of goes to show you that supports are pretty versatile. Yeah. But you definitely want to have something that's quality.
There's a lot of different uses too. So obviously they vertically support our plants. Yeah. But there's much more use of them than that too. If you live kind of more in the country and you have pests that you contend with, a lot of people will use material to surround a plant and keep it protected from rabbits and deer. And at the same time, that sort of, a lot of times it's chicken wire, hog wire, something planted around. It's also allowing a lot of vertical support too. Yeah. Yeah.
And we're in that winter or cool season right now, and we just had our first freeze event for the year. Sometimes like plant supports can be used as a way to throw a frost cloth over.
Yeah, that's true, because when we were talking about the winter preparedness episode, you were telling me something I didn't even know, but it was just really important to keep the plastic lining off of your plant, right?
You like the frost cloth, even a frost cloth, although it's permeable, it's breathable, you don't want that laying on the leaves if you can help it. Right. It's not always a possibility, but that's what we did. We had a lot of plant supports. Like we had some trellis materials in there in the garden, and we used those to keep some beds. It worked out because they were in the center, and I was able to make it go over and off down the sides of the bed. Others, we just simply put, stakes and created some way to keep it elevated above. So, sometimes it's not just about the plant. A lot of these items that are used to tie up and hold growth of vines and such can be used for other methods.
All kinds of things. Yeah. I've seen so many creative things that people are doing right now, even in like raised bed. People are kind of caging raised beds. You'll put almost like a 4-post bed, right, that we sleep in. They're doing in their raised beds where you put it nice, sturdy, like 4 posts at the corner, and now you have a foundation that you can run line and string through and zigzag and make a net on your own, so you can have a lot of versatility in that raised bed for things that you need to grow. Also, a pole bean could grow up one of the sides because pole beans have to have support. They can't just grow on the ground. Yeah. So there's all kinds of cool stuff people do.
One of the real popular method for kind of trellising or growing tomatoes you're seeing come back is where they're growing them up like string.
I've seen that. Yeah.
You can buy like these clips that won't damage the plant, and they just basically clip around loosely.
And you have to do that with the indeterminate tomato, right?
Yeah. Then as the plant continues to grow, they they pull it and they grow it higher, and it keeps it off the ground.
Yeah.
And they're maximizing their space, and they're able to adjust that plant support as the plant grows, which is a really interesting method.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I think they do that at Donna's farm. I think.
Yeah, Brent's done that before. I've seen them do that a lot.
I saw a picture of that.
That's the only person I've ever known personally that's done that, and they're very successful with that.
Yeah.
It's a super easy way. It's just you gotta be able to have something to tie off to. So kind of what you were saying, like having some form of like solid support on the edges, planning ahead where you can do that is really good.
Yeah.
But one of the consideration that people might not think about, what we talked about in our cultural practice episode, crop rotation. So we need to have something that we can move and have these systems available in multiple beds. That way we're not forcing ourselves to come back to the same spot out of convenience. And then we end up building up like disease and pest pressure in the soil. So that's just something that just kind of popped in my head that people might want to consider.
Yeah, I do like those solutions for trellising and supporting that are very movable and adaptable, right? Like your simple hoop, it's so easy. You just stick in the ground, you're done with it. Making the 4 posts on a bed. These are things that like I'm just now starting to come to grips with, right? Because I used to be really willy-nilly. Even this year when I grew a bunch of tomatoes that were actually just volunteers. I had no idea what their genetics were, but they were strong growers, so I just let them go.
Yeah.
And I let them go in a bed, and they just went everywhere. So there was a whole portion of my yard that I couldn't even mow because I'm gonna be mowing my tomatoes, and they're growing really beautiful, like beefsteak looking tomatoes. But if I would have put that forethought into there, and if I would have known, hey, maybe I should just put a little bit of energy up front and trellis these things, I think I would have got a better yield. I would have been able to mow my yard. Like it just would have overall been better.
It oftentimes makes just the care aspect of growing things so much simpler.
Yeah. Then my tomatoes were in the grass getting eaten by pests too, because they weren't up in the air getting breeze all around them.
You could also, like, if you're designing your space, so let's say you're thinking about making some changes to your space and maybe like raised beds or in a garden, you can always consider arch trellises.
Okay.
You can build arch trellises out of just cattle panel that's sturdy enough to hold up.
That's the one arch I have in my in my yard. I have a cattle panel that connects to raised bed gardens.
It could be even just like a kind of a wood arbor type. Something that you built, but having different options from different beds gives you versatility to move around, and also increases your yield because you're giving that support to the plant so that it can hold the weight of, say, tomatoes or we talked about passion vine last time. That biomass, like that plant gets very, very heavy with foliage, so you need something that can handle it. So you have the ability to grow vertically, so you have something that looks nice, that's functional, and also it can turn around and create elements of shade. So you can use some of those materials to mimic certain microclimates, so that you might better grow something longer into a season than you would, other time.
So my pergola that I built is off the back of my house. It in itself is a trellis. I have the passion flower going, and most different cultivars of passion vines are pretty cold tolerant, right?
Yeah,
they're native to North America, and they do really well with our inclement climate. And what I've done is, now that it's kind of taken over by that passion vine, it's creating almost like an insulation. So I can, if it's not like super below freezing, I'll put my plants back there under that because I have a microclimate. I just have one grow light, and sometimes the wind comes through and it will cool it off, but it will retain some heat from it, and it will help protect it. And that's all from trellising, and it's structural trellising, right? So those are some interesting things.
Structural trellising and just trellising in general is an important part of permaculture. So maybe not necessarily looking at it from a growing perspective, but in permaculture, you use trellises in the summer to grow things that will provide shade and reduce temperature
right.
on, say, like a very heavy sun-facing wall, let's say in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day, blocking and reducing the temperature, so you're saving energy.
All
so
right.
there's some unique purposes of trellis materials and options out there that can go even more in depth than just supporting a plant.
Yeah, and some of it's completely free and completely available. During the summer, I use the border between me and my neighbor's yard because it's a hurricane fence. It's a chain link fence. Guess what? That's a trellis.
Yeah.
And I grow squash along it. I grow cucumber along it. I grow all of those vining fruits that love that. And it just goes up and out and goes everywhere, and it's so totally happy. As a matter of fact, I actually like growing the cucumbers on the chain link better than the cattle panel that comes across it, because the cucumbers like to get stuck in the spaces of the cattle panel, and I'm having to break them in half, and I'm wasting a lot of cucumbers. And they never
makes sense.
They never get stuck in the cattle panel or in the chain link. So it's great.
So if you have something set up like a chain link, and let's say you're growing something that's not like a cucumber,
Right.
but it needs some type of support, how do you attach it to it?
Oh, okay. So let's see. I do a couple of different things, okay? And most of them are pretty cheap. I have a junk drawer in my kitchen like everyone else does, and I save like bread twist ties.
Okay.
I use those a lot until I run out. I've been known to use small zip ties. I don't tighten them. I just make them into a loop that kind of keep them there. What else? String. I've used string. I have like a plumb line string, and I'll tie it loosely. I've gotten pretty creative before, but that's about it. That's about it. I try not to use materials that will degrade in the sun, like UV sensitive materials. Yeah.
I asked this because this is a common thing. You say you're growing tomatoes, peppers, or in late summer we're growing eggplants, and they're getting huge, and they need some support from the weight.
Yeah.
We've got to tie it off, but it's important to choose something that is gonna, if at all possible, it's going to be able to expand and not girdle the plant.
Well, nothing I named does that.
No,
so
but and that doesn't make those wrong choices.
Yeah.
But I bring it up because if you're going to tie plants off to any kind of a support or anything, you need to make sure if it's something that is rigid or that has no flexibility, then depending on what the plant's doing and how fast it grows, it could grow into
it'll stunt the growth, and
it could damage the plant. So tying loosely is important. One of my favorite things to always bring up to people is it's one of the longest plant tie items in the that's ever been around. It's called Miracle Tie. It's like a green stretchy tape, and you just you pull it out, and you can just pull it and it'll break. But it's super strong. But when you tie a plant off with it, it stretches. So
is it like kind of like an ace bandage, it looks like almost.
It's like a poly material. It's translucent, and you're not gonna you got to pull hard, but the reason why it's a good example, because if a plant does grow into it, it stretches with it, and it won't girdle the plant. So it just it gives you an idea that you have to be careful about how you tie things off, because for me it would really stink to grow something and it's getting so big, and we're still waiting on fruit production or vegetables, and then we end up cutting off kind of the life source by the way we tied it. So
and that brings up something too. It's green. That reminds me a lot of all of the fruit trees you get from, say, Sutherland's or any of these things, they're always grafted, right? And by nature of being a grafted tree, they take a branch and graft it onto a root ball. So there's always that weak point there, and they usually come with a stake. Right, so you'll have like a improved Meyer limit or something. It'll have a metal stake, and then it will be attached to that. And it's usually with like rigid green plastic straps. So you need to kind of watch out for your plant as it's being supported, because it will grow into that and it will tighten it and restrict it. So just cut it off. But if you cut it off too early, maybe it'll flap over. I have an olive tree that I planted that's a lot like that. I cut it off too early, and now it just hangs. It's just like... And And I don't know. I need to, I guess, reattach it to support, but I don't want it to get weak either. I want it to develop strong, a strong structure in the wind. And I struggle with that. I don't really know when is best to tie that tree up or support it.
I mean, there's never a wrong time. I mean,
yeah.
Trees are often one of the most wrongly supported items. Being able to stake out a tree, we see so many times as landscapers, people staking trees, and they've got it in the wrong area. They're not actually holding anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a new company out that makes a really cool like tree staking system that goes like on a T-post, and it grabs around the tree, but it's loose. Okay, so the tree has the ability to move. So you've got to be careful too. If you wrongly support something and you do get like a heavy weather event, high wind, you could actually cause breakage.
Right, because if it's restricting the middle and it's turning it over,
yeah. So you got to have a little bit of give in any time you're tying something up or putting it onto a trellis.
I feel like
stake.
And I feel like, especially when we're talking about trees, I feel like they have to kind of feel the wind too, because then it's going to signal that plant to make a stronger structure.
Yeah, I mean, if ironically, I learned this in my studies when I was studying permaculture. Trees and plants are adaptable. So those are things that have a really long life, like a tree. You plant it in an area where the winds are, say you have a prevalent north wind all the time, that tree might grow in kind of a weird shape.
Like growing into the wind.
To support itself, just to preserve itself. So it's really interesting. Plants are super intelligent.
Yeah, they really are in a weird way, and we're finding out all the time how much more sophisticated they are than we ever would have thought.
Yeah.
They talk to each other. They share resources, all of that. That's nuts, man. That's nuts. Support your trees. Support your plants.
Yeah. Feed them.
Do we have anything else we want to say about supports? I'd like to say that one of the biggest joys of supporting your plants is the creative aspect of it, right? You can use nearly almost any material. Me, myself, mainly for trellising, I use my neighbor's bamboo that's overgrowing, and I just lash it together with zip ties. I have a rose cage that I've made out of it. I have bamboo trellises. I make all that. So you don't even have to spend money on it.
No, just get creative.
Yeah, get creative.
There's stuff laying around all the time that can be used.
All the time. Support your plants.
Yeah. They'll support you.
Anyway, well, that's been it, guys. Thanks for joining us on this kind of little back and forth. It's a shorter episode than usual. We just want to get in here and talk about supporting plants, trellising, materials, maybe some hurdles and stuff like that. So we appreciate you coming around, and we'll see you on the next one.